So did you ever see that movie about cigarettes back in early 2000? What was that?
Thank you for smoking.
Thank you for smoking,
yes.
right?
Yeah,
So you've
Nick
seen
Naylor,
the movie.
yes, yeah.
What a sick movie, right?
Yeah,
I mean, sick in a good way, like great acting,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And I watch it, I'm like, okay. First of all, I can't stand cigarettes. I mean, I'm somebody that, if a salesperson comes to my house, they smoke cigarettes. If I shake their hands, I'm not buying from them. That's just me. I don't like cigarettes. I've never been a fan of cigarettes. To me, the smell of cigarettes is very different than the smell of weed, the smell of cigar. There's something about cigarettes.
It's all chemical.
And it's my personal opinion. Some people say, I can't believe you just said that. I smoke. I'm offended. It's my opinion. It's how I feel. But when I watched that movie, I sat there and I said, what a freaking great job lobbying to convince millions of intelligent people with common sense that cigarette doesn't harm you. You're just watching. You're like, wow, what a great job lobbyists did, right? and then commercials and all this. And then finally people are like, listen, you're full of shit. Here's a lung smoking cigarettes.
Yeah.
Here's one not smoking cigarettes. Oh, that's not the case. That's something else. No, this is the reality.
They always
right?
hit you with anecdotal. Well, I have an uncle who lived to 95.
Yeah. So then, but what that took me to was, what other industry or product have we been convinced that's good or bad because of brilliant men like him that are great salespeople, great communicators, great persuaders who go around being witty, sharp, smart. You're like, oh my God, this guy knows what he's talking about. He's just kind of back down, and the average person can't, debate and have an interaction with somebody at that level. Just like, dude, you know what? I'm not even gonna have the conversation. Whatever, I'll leave it alone, right?
Right.
So for me, when I think about climate change, I look at both sides. I try to reason and look at both sides. So on one side, they're shoving it down our throat like Neil Tyson. What's his name?
Tyson.
Yeah, he's like, well, at this point of the game, the question isn't whether it's happening or not. There is no such thing as anti-climate change, whatever, deniers. It's happening. Those people don't know what they're talking about. So now that we know it's happening, let's address it, right? You can't even have the debate. And then the other side, is who wouldn't want that to happen? Who doesn't want the debate of climate change to happen? Well, I'm from, I lived in Texas 5 years. There's a lot of oil guys that probably don't want this to happen. I would assume that a part of Elon Musk selling the fact that we have to be careful with this is his company is Tesla. So the incentive is, I sell insurance, I have to sell you what the benefit of life insurance. He sells life settlement. He's going to sell you on what life you have something you sell, you have to sell us on it, and we all have to persuade each other, right? But there has to be somebody that's right and somebody that's wrong. So I had Paul Manafort here 2 weeks ago, last week maybe. And you know who Paul Manafort is.
Trump, yeah.
And he's a lobbyist. He's made millions of dollars just off lobbying. I'm uncomfortable with lobbyists as well. If they're going to use it, they're going to use it as well. Fine, no problem. Your argument that you make, one may say, Mark, I mean, you're from Rush Limbaugh's side. I mean, we know where Rush stood. Rush is as right-wing and Republican as he can get. He pissed off a lot of people for 20 years. Okay, great, fine. He's a hero to many, but he's hated by many as well. I mean, the hero and hated is in the same category, meaning as far right, far left, both sides. Some may say, yeah, you're probably just defending your oil guys and people who are on your side of the aisle. They're your friends. You go to parties with them. So you have to say something like this because if something happens, those guys may use billions of dollars. So you're just helping those guys out. What do you say to people who say that?
I get that all the time.
Yeah.
In fact, if you go to my About page at Climate Depot, it actually, someone said, and I can't remember who now, but some professor, that I was Nick Naylor in the flesh or embodied in the flesh on the climate issue. I am not a lobbyist. I've never been a lobbyist. I don't lobby. I don't go to, I stay as far away from D.C. as possible these days. But when I worked there, I was a communication director for the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee. My organization, I work for a company called Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow. Chiefly, and like when I say chiefly, almost 90% of our money is from direct mail to the public. We are strictly grassroots. The rest of the money might come from foundations, but we do not. And you can go look at my About page on Wikipedia, which I have no control over. They'll say that the group we had was funded by ExxonMobil. Well, they're very careful in their wording. I've never gotten money that I'm aware of from ExxonMobil. ExxonMobil gave to everyone back in the day. And they've tried this a trick that they'll say ExxonMobil is given to all these climate denial groups. And you'll look at it and they'll say they've given to the Heritage Foundation, they've given to Cato, and a lot of these have like 5, 10, 15% of their budget go to that. But then you look at it, and ExxonMobil gave to a lot of liberal groups. They gave the natural gas industry gave money to the Sierra Club so they could fight coal. money's like that all the way out there. But in terms of me being, courting fossil fuels or being a spokesman for fossil fuels, it's utter nonsense. They hate me. They've hated me. They want nothing to do with me. I one time took a tour of
fossil fuel guys hate you.
Fossil fuel, yeah, because when I say that, they may have liked me in the 90s or something, or maybe early 2000s, but that they gave up about 2004 or 5, long before I was even in the Senate. ExxonMobil announced they were no longer giving to any groups expressing climate, denial or whatever. So here's the gist: they stopped giving money. And when they stopped giving money, they increased their money to the other side. They just got a grant. It was from, I want to say, ExxonMobil gave to Stanford University $100 million to study climate change. Another basic grant just came out, the largest single climate grant by an internet billionaire, and I can't remember his name right now. It was not a household name. Gave to another university. So the money from that side, and now from the fossil fuel to appear green, far outweighs it. So I don't like that idea at all, because I basically, my salary hasn't even changed that much on the same scale as it was when I worked for the U.S. taxpayer in the Senate. So you could argue, you mentioned Rush Limbaugh, you could argue I'm ideologically motivated, and I think there's truth to that. Everyone has an ideological motivation, I think, particularly people involved in politics. But if you go back, I look at what happens, if you could even just remove the science, forget about the science. And this is what I like to do. To your point about you don't want people, Rush Limbaugh was an entertainer, and I don't, but I'm trying to actually, let people see the other side to this whole issue. So one of the ways I do it, I just say to hell with talking about the science for a moment. If we actually faced a crisis, nothing they've proposed in their own words, by their own methods, would have any impact on the climate and save us. In other words, if we were facing a climate catastrophe and we relied on them for the Green New Deal, the UN Paris Agreement, carbon taxes, etc., we would all be doomed. And I can go through and I can point to you quotes from United Nations. I can point to you quotes from the EPA. I can cite their studies, their MAGIC, that's an acronym for MAGIC, for their climate models that show that even if we fully committed to all this, there would be no impact pretty much on CO2 emissions, let alone the climate, if you actually believe CO2 was causing it.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.